Well, we'll see who pops in here. I haven't seen anybody yet, but normally once I go live, it gets people rolling. So
All right.
it
We
should
could
be
talk
pretty
about
good.
mundane bull dink in the meantime. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I
Oh,
probably won't
yeah.
pull them in. I did think to plug it on my channel, but not until 30 minutes prior, and I don't know how much action my community board actually gets. But
I think it does pretty well. I always see all your community posts and everything. It looks like we have two people on right now. So,
wait, is it you and
well,
me?
no, we don't count actually.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's two people out in internet land. There's Kyle. He says, "What's up, fellas?" Kyle is Oregon Fishing Adventures, and your average fish keeper. He's
Hey,
here.
I'm Fish Keeper.
Right on. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining in, guys. We got a third person here. Hey, and there's
Hey,
Earl,
Earl. Yep.
the man of the hour, right? Well, he'll have his other hour, but
I was
he
gonna say the
wasn't
man
able to
every
go.
hour is what I'm
Yeah,
told.
no kidding. Yeah, he's been on quite the tear with his subs lately. He's been getting a lot of action. It's all the crab cracking. And there's Jake, Hitch by Hitch. Welcome in. And Kyle's heading down to the Rogue. He's after work, so that's going to be a late run. So luckily,
Yeah,
you live a
somebody's
lot
only fished
closer.
it a couple of times. The Rogue River's so dang special. It's such a beautiful river. It's
Oh,
yeah, it's just wonderful staying down there, camping there. It's I haven't been down there in 15 years, but geez, some good memories there and some beautiful fish. Holy smokes! So yeah, I'm very envious of Oregon fishing adventures there.
yeah. No, Kyle's really got the good stuff going. So let's see, Jake, and let's see, Earl is going commercial fishing tomorrow. That's what Earl's got going on.
I'm going to assume that means he's shooting a fishing commercial. It's about time he got some eyes on him.
Yeah. Well, for anybody that doesn't know who this is Blake. He is officially the man behind the camera and in front of the camera for Washington Fish Quest. He's a good friend. We've known each other now for a couple of years, and he messaged me earlier in the week to say, "Hey, can I come on your live?" And of course, everybody's, welcome to come on my live at any given time. You just shoot me a message and do that. So
No, it was
it's
great.
yeah, no, it's good to have you here, Blake. I know back in the podcast days, we did a podcast with you and everything else, but since then, everything else has kind of changed, and now this is all Pacific Northwest centric, and you're one of the earliest YouTubers in the Pacific Northwest fishing YouTube, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks for having me on. I ask people all the time to be on their live streams. I think you were the first person that said yes. So I really appreciate it. But it
Well,
was yeah, absolutely. And that was a joke, by the way, everybody. Not that, but at any rate, but at any rate, yeah, I've been around for 12 plus years. Uh, when I first started my channel on Washington State, anyway, like a lot of the videos I did were like the first time doing that, either that fish or that place, and now now I'm definitely not that popular, but I like it. I like my channel because I feel it's like a clubhouse. I purposely try not to be too sensational. I like having about like 1,000 views a video, and I know everybody who's commenting and that sort of thing. So I'm very very happy where things are at. It's been
yeah.
very blessed. Like I've really liked my YouTube journey, honestly.
Well, and you had your beginnings back in the good old cable access days. That's one of those cool things that you started out with. So before YouTube, of course, we had cable access TV, and you never knew what you were going to get on cable access. Especially down here in Portland, we had some colorful characters that were around, and I'm sure that up in your area, up in Olympia, I don't know where your cable access was. Centralized at that you were working with, but Olympia, that kind of area. I don't know if did you guys have any
Yeah, I'm
colorful.
from Centralia, Washington, actually originally,
Mhm.
and yeah, I did. I was. It was one of my first jobs. Actually, geez, this is too much about me, but Paperboy was my first job. This was back. Centralia Chronicle was one of the last evening newspapers in the country. So when I got in the workforce when I was 12, and then when I was had a number of jobs, but yeah, like 18 to about 22, I shot and filmed Centralia City Council meetings, like Music's in the Park and that sort of thing, and that's how I got into filming and really fell in love with it. I like being behind the camera and editing is just as much, maybe more than actually being on the dang thing. But it's I see my videos and you kind of cringe. It's like when you hear your voice on a tape when you're like 10 and you're like, oh no, that's how I sound. Video makes it even worse. So at any rate, because you gotta look at your face. But I digress. Thank you, your average fish keeper. So I'm editing a video right now, and just for your comment there, I will include the intro because sometimes I don't. It's messed up. You can every now and again I look at the analytics, and I love my intro too, and it goes like woo, just like crap. Like people who aren't familiar with the channel, they just like tune out. But the old salts, the people who have been around for a long time, love the intro. And it's like, whatever. I don't care. You don't have to watch the video. And then the other thing is, yes, I have gotten tips from more successful YouTubers. And I think just because of my longevity, I hold a place in some of their hearts because I was around before them. And to like give me tips on how to get like more views and stuff. And almost all of it's like anti how an old cable TV program would run. You know what I mean? It's like being way more sensational, like put action right up front, narrate everything, never stop talking, which I kind of do anyway. But at any rate, I'm always like, no, like this is going to be like a 90s TV show, basically. And that's what you're going to get. And I'm fine living with that as far as the views and all that good stuff. Because some people really like it and some people it's just not their cup of tea.
Well, I find it nostalgic personally because you did one where I think you and another friend, you guys went out and you looked for an old cemetery down on the coast, or it's somewhere in the coast range up there. And you guys took off hiking. You're like, man, this is getting kind of spooky. And it cuts out and then it comes back. And I'm like, man, this is just like a cable access, like, B film, kind of horror scene type thing. It's just so nostalgic because you would always see like the independent filmmakers or, which is essentially what we all are, but we're putting in really short amounts of time. We're not putting out hour and a half independent films. I mean, some people do, but for us, 15, 20 minutes, we have fun. But that was like your other adventures outside the fishing. Don't get me wrong. I love the fishing, but the other adventures are just as much fun. Like you had a short up where you stopped at Snoqualmie Pass and you got a corn dog, you're like the best corn dog in Washington State. And it's like, those are the things that nobody ever puts in the video that you do, that you actually showcase. And I like it,
Oh, I super appreciate that, Brian. And I love that about your channel too. I loved your one of your first videos about the oldest fish hatchery in Oregon, and go into the foundation and the history of it. Like I love the what do you call it? The versatility of your channel. Where I like the historical stuff does so poorly on YouTube usually, but it's the stuff I geek out on. I love it when it's like someone talks about an old lure or an old method of fishing or an old building or an old sporting goods store or culture or whatever. I mean that's because that's like history. It's like it's not just entertainment.
Well, that's the whole thing, and you had picked up some vintage lures at one point. I believe it was a casting spoon. It reminded me like of an old Steely spoon or something. And you went down to the Stock Lake and you caught a trout with it and everything else. And a lot of people, they just blow off a lot of the old lures and they're like, well, they don't work anymore. We got to use, let's take steelhead fishing, for example, where, things have went completely off the chart. They're like, oh, we got to throw beads and we got to bobber dog and you got to do this and this and this and this. And there's tons of YouTube channels that, everybody does the same thing. And I do that too when I go out and fish. But sometimes it's fun to put on the old tackle and just go after it, But, the simplicity of those lures it gets overlooked in the history of those lures. I mean, they worked then, they'll work now, you just have to be a little bit more patient. That's where the patient angler comes in.
Absolutely. I'm going to do some more of that this year, I think, too. I got a couple old lures. One's called, it's like the Flying Bat or something. It's this little silver bat-like lure. It's weird, and it kind of flutters up and down. I'm not sure if it's for trout or bass or what, but I'll just see. I think it'd do well for panfish at any rate. And then I got this salmon plug from the 50s that my mom got me for Christmas. So it was like number one on my list. So I'm gonna enjoy that. It's just an old wooden plug, kind of looks like a bass top water.
Yeah. Is it like a Heddon or do you know what brand it is?
I wish it's downstairs. Dang it! I should have brought it with me. No, it's not a Heddon. It's just out of Seattle. I think it might be a Max actually. It might be like a Max lure, but they were making like wooden plugs or something at the time. I think it was a Max. I'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool. Kyle just commented, that he's going on a guided trip and he couldn't help himself but to bring his 2 big bead boxes with him. Nothing wrong with beads, Kyle. I'm not bashing that, and they work good. They catch a lot of fish. It's just cool when you see somebody go out and they rig up an old, old rig like an Okie Drifter or Corkies, or they run just a sand shrimp with a little bit of cork on it or something. But Jake here, he commented that the Castmaster will always be the real OG. And, Kyle, the river you're going on down on the Rogue, they get those little half pounders, and those Castmasters just blast those little half pounders like crazy. I mean, they work. They just work so good.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and that's kind of a segue maybe into the subject matters, because aren't we going to do smelt and steelhead?
Well, we can talk about whatever fish that we want to talk about, Blake. This is an open forum. We can talk about,
This is America, gosh dang it. Talk about whatever we want.
America. I got the flag flying right out front over there.
Yeah, all right.
So, yeah, it's got its light on and everything else. The one of the big things that a lot of people seem to overlook are all the other species that we have that may be non-native. And you went over to, I can't remember the name of the reservoir. Your last video, you were ice fishing for yellow perch, which yellow perch are not native to the Pacific Northwest. They were introduced and everything else, but we've come to love and adore those little guys because they're so tasty cooked up, and they do, they're a fun ice fish. They go right to the bottom. And you can jig them up and all that stuff. So, I mean, you're pretty prolific with the perch. You have multiple videos where you've went and targeted the perch.
Yeah, absolutely. And this year was a little rough. I think we had kind of this really heavy atmospheric pressure pressing down on them. In Washington, at least, I don't know, Oregon might have been a little. Wait, no, you guys are further south. That doesn't make sense. I was going to say at least our ice fishing season was a little short, and yeah, I love going for perch because when they're on, and it's just like a blast. I'm going to release a video on Monday, which will now have the theme in it, and I caught a walleye on that one, so I was really happy about that. But you can basically go over there and throw a Hail Mary for walleyes, which I've done successfully a couple of times, but there's many times that I have done it unsuccessfully as well. Whereas the perch are usually pretty surefire, don't get me wrong, you can get skunked on any fish in the world, but yeah.
Oh yeah. That's the whole thing. Weed Hopper, thanks for stopping in. Got another guy here. So, yeah, your fish keeper, you said that you smashed a penny at the Seattle Aquarium and you ended up turning it into a mini wobbler, and you caught a couple stalker trout on it. That's one of those things. The simplicity of some of these lures. The way that they came about was basically by pure accident. Lou Eppinger, little history lesson. Lou Eppinger was the one that really commercialized the spoon. There was a guy before him. His name slips my mind right now, but he actually developed the spoon fishing for trout in a lake in Vermont. But Blake, are you familiar with the Lure Jensen lure called the Super Duper?
Yes.
So, interesting story. The guy that invented the Super Duper, he was fishing off a bridge up in Yellowstone National Park, and his tie clip came off, and it fluttered down, and he saw the fish chase after it, and he was like, maybe I can make a lure out of that and throw it out and catch some trout. And you never hear about that lure that much, but when I was a kid, that was a really popular modified spoon.
Somehow it's escaped my notice, and I actually shot a video this year where I hiked to Upper Granite Lake, which is a great hike, and it's the one lake in our state that has Arctic grayling. And on the way there's this kind of base lake, and I was throwing a Super Duper. And keep in mind, these fish are very opportunistic because they don't know to fear the hand of man. but they were just whacking it. It was and it's so nice because it flutters so slow. It just is going down like that, and you jerk it and it goes down like that. It's yeah, it's a wonderful lure. I need to use it much, much more. It's a great one. And thanks for the history on the spoons. I love fishing spoons.
Yeah, all of these different little lures that are out there, and all the different things that you can do with them. It's just amazing to me. It's pretty cool that we still have the opportunity to fish with some of these lures. And like you said, that wooden plug. Are you going to go out and fish that?
I am, and I am so bloody tempted to run downstairs just to show you the box, but I know that'd be pretty bad. Whatever this is, YouTube. But it's it's yeah, I am going to fish it for sure, and I'm trying to fish it in an area because it'll be for king, so I'll be pulling it near the bottom. But where it's I tell you what, maybe I'll fish CQ with it, so it's can be a little more mid water column. Or yeah,
Yeah.
those are areas in Washington State where the kings run a little more higher up for different reasons. But yeah, I'd hate to lose it because it's an awesome, it's an antique.
Yeah. Ted, welcome in. Thanks for stopping by. Um, yeah, you were trolling CQ with just naked herring with a herring weight on it, and you were lighting up coho like crazy just doing that. And I know that you get into the kings too. Well, you guys call them kings and silver, so you're lighting up kings, you're lighting up silvers, everything else.
Do you want to do Chinook and coho? I actually kind of prefer Chinook and coho. It's just the local nomenclature. You know what I mean? I think Chinook and coho sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Maybe that'll be our next little history venture. Is like, why do we call them Chinook and coho in Oregon, and everybody else calls them kings and silvers everywhere else? It's like we'll call sockeye, and I think that even in Washington, you guys call them sockeye. You don't call them red, but you go to Alaska and they're called red salmon. So
yeah, good point.
Yeah,
do you call pinks, or you call them humpies?
We call them pinks. But we don't get any pinks down here. I mean, we get a few up to Columbia, but that's it. But chum salmon, we all call them chum. And we only got 2 rivers that get them here. You guys got a ton of rivers that get them. But I think they call them dog salmon in Alaska. So it's kind of interesting, where did that local nomenclature come from? Was it, maybe the larger Norwegian presence up in the Sound area versus Oregon, where we had more German, presence or something like that early on in the settlers, or I don't know, but that's kind of one of the cool things.
I just got to take a moment to say, if you're not from the area and you're ever in Washington State, CQ, you have to, of course, the seasons are variable, but that coho fishery where you're just trolling a herring behind a banana weight, it is such a blast. Like, they just whack it. I mean, it's just like a vicious, like, peacock bass strike type of a deal. Your pull just doubles over. You got like a 3-ounce banana weight, but that's it between you and the fish. And this year they opened it for wilds, which they haven't done a long time. It used to be CQ would be like impossible to find a place to park in the month of October, at least the first half, because they'd have it open for wilds. And up until then, it would only be open for hatchery retention. And the big bee run comes through in October as well. So, I mean, it's kind of if you can find them, it's usually really good. And this year they opened it up again and for wilds. And last year, I should say, October 1st to October 15th. And it was just a blast. It's just a white knuckle fishery. It's about as good as it gets for me. It's just so simple. And it's sometimes you'll stop the boat, and you'll accidentally mooch, like your period will start fluttering down and your pole will just double over. It's sometimes they'll come up and they're so aggressive. They'll be right by the prop wash. They'll be like 10 feet behind the boat. Sometimes it's just bonkers. It's they're so great when they're feeding like that.
Well, and you brought up a interesting technique that works really good in the Sound, but I don't know of a lot of people down here in the offshore that do it. And I haven't been on a boat where anybody's been willing to try it, but that's mooching. And of course we talk about mooching rigs when we're trolling, and down here we get our September non-select coho season, and like Earl and Jake and I know Matt's not on here tonight. He's got other engagements and all that. We go out there, and that's when we can do our wilds. And once you find them, it's just blood sport. But we're trolling triangles and we're trolling spinners and that kind of stuff. But I've never been on a boat where anybody's wanted to actually set up and actually mooch. But you guys mooch a lot up in the Sound. But you guys also have deeper pockets of water where use your electronics and find the fish.
We have deep pockets of water, and they also get ran into a. The Sound's kind of like a big tunnel. Some people even think of it as a river. Yeah, obviously it's not, but I mean, just as far as like the tactics you'd use. And we have pockets, and then we also have kind of where they run. So yeah, I guess now that I think about it, that is a pretty big advantage. And mooching also has I need to do a video on the history. I absolutely need to do a video on the history of mooching in Washington State. It actually originated around Seattle. Japanese folks would ask. This is the story. I just want to say that so I don't come off as like super racist or something. But they would ask for leftover herring or get leftover herring. People fishing from the docks, and I think they would sometimes be like torn up. And usually when you mooch, you plug cut them. You don't have to, but you would. And then you just let them flutter down. So I believe it probably got the term mooching because people took it as like they're, like the term mooching. Like if I offered you for like $5 or something, you know what I mean? Or maybe a cold egg roll or something like that. So, so at any rate, there's a mooching tournament. I mean, I think you might be able to. No, it is a mooching only tournament that usually happens every February, and it's out of Seattle, and I think it's in its like 76th year or something like that. And it is about the history. Yeah, I mean, so it's a deep deep traditional thing in Washington State. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've always wanted to participate in that tournament, and obviously it's for blackmouth. That's what they're mooching for in February. So those immature kings, but it's a cool way to fish.
No, definitely. Well, and then from the mooching perspective, down here later in the season when the springers start coming in, you start seeing a lot of people vertical jig with buzz bombs, diamond jigs, what have you. They're all about the same in what they are, and they'll be vertical jigging in the rivers where you do get that funnel of fish where they kind of move around and everything else. It's pretty cool. The bite's real aggressive, and when you mooch a spring or you jig a springer, when you hook them, they fire directly to the surface. So you're reeling as fast as you can. You got to have a really high retrieve rate reel, and you're reeling as fast as you possibly can, and you get it up, and then it takes off on its death run and does all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. It would be fun to do a mooching tournament for sure, but you're talking about immature kings. Blackmouth is another term for them. Pretty cool.
So, sorry. So I couldn't see the video for a second. So I had to look this up to be sure. So I believe it would be in its 87th year this year. The Tengu T-E-N-G-U Tengu Blackmouth Derby. Let's see here. In its 85th year, Tengu Blackmouth Derby celebrates Seattle and Japanese American communities' salmon fishing heritage. So yeah, very, very cool.
That's super cool. Man, that would be a blast to do that. It looks like Fishkeeper, you're talking about that, and then obviously, you did a vertical jigging video as well with that, and so you have actual jigging videos. It's not something commonly used down here. So, this year there's going to be times where if I locate a pocket of fish, I want to try mooching them. I don't think it's going to work in freshwater, but it's worth a shot anyways. For sure.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, thank you, your average fish keeper. That I've turned a lot of people on to saltwater salmon jigging. Like I'll go to the store, I'll go to Sportco and get a jig, and sometimes there'll be a guy next to me getting a jig, and he's like, "I'm getting this jig because I saw your video." So it was very nice that. And I got a buddy who's now caught several salmon jigging, actually a few. So yeah, it's just a lot more enjoyable than using a downrigger, And I do enjoy downriggering. I enjoy catching fish, But it is a nice way to fish. And I was going to say I've gotten some comments on my videos about when people jig buzz bombs in the Columbia. I assume that they might be snagging, like trying to snag. Do you know if there's any truth to that, or is that like crankery?
Well,
I don't know.
So
I just responded like, "Oh, you're saying that I'm doing that?" I took it personal at first, and then they was like, "Oh, I'm from Oregon," and
So there's a couple theories behind people that use buzz bombs, and it comes more down to people fishing stacked tributary rivers. So let's take. I'll just throw the Sandy River out for an example. It's a direct tributary of the Columbia down here in Oregon. It gets a multitude of different, runs. So it gets summer steelhead, winter steelhead. It gets coho. It gets Chinook. It gets all that stuff. And buzz bombs will work in deep pools, and they operate almost in the same respect as a twitching jig. A twitching jig is a single hook. A buzz bomb's going to be a treble, typically. Now, you can always change that out and go to a single point hook on that and I don't think it's going to make a difference. But where the buzz bomb snagging comes into play is when you're in a very, very narrow, tight quartered river, and you get a large mass of fish in a small pocket hole. And there's some ethical questions that come into play when you have 55 to 60 to 100 fish in a 20 by 30 area, and you're throwing out a 7-ounce leaded jig. Or it's not that heavy, but it's a big chunk of lead. It's a diamond jig. We use them offshore for lings and all that kind of stuff too. But you're casting across these fish and you're jerking like this. Well, it's no different than like a sockeye flossing rig or a snagging rig in Alaska.
I gotcha.
It's essentially a weighted hook, and so a lot of fish end up foul hooked. In respects to that, you really have to pick where you're going to throw the buzz bomb and how you're going to work the buzz bomb.
I got you.
Now, that's all subjective. Now, I've never heard of anybody snagging any fish by buzz bombing in the Columbia or the Willamette or the Sound, for that matter, because there's such a large water volume. It's such a massive area of water. You can vertical jig all you want. Weed Hopper, he was talking about hover fishing as well. Hover fishing's basically hit the bottom, crank up 2 cranks, and just free drift with the current. And you put a drift sock on, and you try to keep your lines vertical. And it's essentially like float fishing eggs without a float.
Oh, cool.
They do that a lot in the Columbia River, more so upriver, up above Bonneville Dam, in between Bonneville Dam and the Dalles Dam, in that stretch of the gorge there, and so you get a lot of this where, the hover fishing guys, they do that kind of thing, but you could easily jig those areas as well. And the concentration of fish is not, they have a lot of space, they have a lot of space that they can move around in and everything else. But yeah, you take, let's take like the Hoh River, for example. It's a fairly large river, but as you get higher up in a tributary, it gets a lot smaller and smaller. Or even like I know the Green River's got a big tidal section, but its higher reaches are going to get smaller and smaller. Bombing that buzz bomb across those big holes, obviously you're gonna hook up on stuff that you don't intend on hooking up on. And so, guys that twitch jigs in those holes, it can happen the same way. And especially with chum tail slap everything first, especially something rapid moving. And your chances of hooking into one of those things foul is real high. That's just what it is. So
you hook them. I most of my chum I catch by drift and herring. Like I'll anchor in there's places in the South Sound you can anchor in the salt, like above streams are going to run up. And you float them, and they're absolutely whacking it, but yeah, you foul. Even then, you foul hook a ton. Yeah, it's
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I was all news to me.
Yeah. So yeah, when the Columbia through and through is much like the Sound. It's a lot of trolling. A lot of people are out there trolling, and depending on the time of year, we're about ready to kick off springers. That's going to open up April 1st to May 2nd. They're going to open up a month-long window there. WDFW and ODFW, they got their window open, and you're going to see a lot of guys cut plug herring and triangles, unless the water temperature really comes up a lot, and then it's going to be pro trolls and spinners. That's like the magic combination, and then pick your poison on blades and flasher colors. You'll see a lot of people out there anchor fishing with like your, quick fish or mag lips and, wrapped with a sardine. So you'll have your hog liners, you're going to have your trollers. Each section of river is going to pan out to be different. It's kind of a, with a flowing current in a singular direction, a lot of times, like the bank plunkers and the anchor guys catch more fish than the trolling guys do. And it just kind of, breaks down. Jake, take care. Thanks for stopping in.
See you, Jake.
It's going to be a troll fishery early. The anchor guys are going to be the anchor guys because that's what works for them. The plunkers are going to plunk because they don't have a boat to go out there and get after it. So, it's all kind of this big combination, but, the vertical jigging really kicks off in, late April, early May. And that's when, like people start saying, oh, you're trying to snag fish and all this other stuff. The water volumes in those rivers are so massive that, you're not even going to come remotely close to getting into that. So, the ethical question is when those springers get into small tributaries, do we want to continue to, fish a stacked hole with a big heavy jig like that, or do we want to switch over and float sand shrimp and eggs, or do stuff like that?
No, absolutely. And hey, I agree with Weed Hopper there. I love plunking as well. It's in Washington State, we primarily plunk for, well, I guess not in the Columbia. Obviously, on the Washington side of the Columbia, we do a lot of plunking. But in my neck of the woods, like in the Squally and that sort of thing, we plunk for chum salmon, big old spinning glow with some eggs behind it or something like that, or a shrimpy. And speaking of the steelheads, when I was coming up as a kid, so being from Centralia, we have a couple of good rivers. We have the Skookumchuck and the Chehalis. The mouth of the Chehalis. Wait, did I get that right? No, I had that backwards. It's the mouth of the Skookumchuck, entering into the Chehalis. And yeah, we used to, this is more on the Cowlitz I do this. So on the Cowlitz, I used to fish side planers. You just put out a side planer, and you could do it from shore, and the current would just have it there drifted. And it was like plunking. We would fish a wiggle ward or a hot shot, and have the rattle in there to tick them off. And, back in my day, we didn't use the shrimp yet, the dyed shrimp. But now I think that's how you do it. You put the shrimp probably behind it. But it was just like plunking because you just sit there, maybe make a fire, and then every now and again you just go, and fish on, and it was bonkers, But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the side planer is oftentimes called the poor man's drift boat because of the way that it hits the brakes. Lure Jensen came up with all this stuff, and, they're one of our classic tackle manufacturers from the Pacific Northwest. My grandma actually worked for them back in the 60s in Hood River when they were there, and they'd taken it was an old chicken coop, and she was a punch operator, and she would punch out spinner blades and spoons. And so she would do all this stuff. But Lure Jensen was kind of the innovator. And people think, oh, well, the guy's last name was Jensen. His name was Luhr Jensen, Lure Jensen. He lived in Hood River. He started that company. That was his thing. And so they were a big innovator across the board. And then Buzz Ramsey got on with those guys, and he really blew up a lot of their lures. And you mentioned the hot shot and the side planer. The side planer was meant to be coupled with the hot shot, like a 2.5 or a 3.0 hot shot, where, you put it out there, you set the lever down and basically let it walk across the current. And then, you get a fish, the lever snaps, and, you got a fish on, and you're fighting the side planer and the fish at the same time. But it's deadly effective because it has that braking motion, just like, pulling plugs in a drift boat. So it works. It's just deadly effective in the right waters and the right conditions. It just, I could only imagine in the Sound, you get fresh salt fish coming in, they're going to be very aggressive, especially steelhead.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I that's one of those one of those techniques, I think probably largely due to people being shoulder to shoulder, at least in a lot of areas of Washington State, that I've seen kind of go to the wayside a little more. Cause, when you used to be able to I remember being a kid in the 80s and like fishing that way for him, like it was, it was kind of a family affair too, because it's just a fun way. You can go down there and let's see. Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I need to try that, actually, using the side planers on the Deschutes. Old man, old truck. Thanks for stopping in. You're never too late. Yeah.
Well, an old truck. I mean, you can't get your two.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Yeah. So there's just so many different techniques, but you push the button. You said steelhead. So, have you been out yet this year?
I have not. I need to get. So I grew up. I said this 5 times already, but in Centralia, and I grew up steelhead fishing, and it was what everybody did who was into fishing because it was a local fishery. And I have fallen so out of it. To me, like steelhead fishing, you're either like pretty hardcore about it and you're going out like all the time, or you sort of like just miss it, like you just don't do it. I know, I'm sure there's a lot of people in between, but I really need to find my inner steelheader again because 'tis the season. And yeah. So no, I haven't done jack as far as steelheading goes this year, but I do need to start getting out. I mean, I've got good rivers around me. I've got the Winoochee near me, which is really good, or can be really good anyway. I got the Sats up you know, and then like I said, you go down to the Cowlitz. Then the Olympic Peninsula is just off the chain as far as well, it can be anyway when they're in. And there's some small rivers there too that you can, or at least tributaries off of some of the bigger ones that pulled. So yeah, and that's kind of probably my favorite method is just using like a little bobber on a clear water stream and just have the little what are they, marabou jigs, you know, like the little yeah.
That guy right there.
Yep. Just like that. Yep.
Deadly.
I have the ones that have the little beads. Like I'll have like I think it's usually it's just so weird how weird we get about our stuff. It's like a white bead, a red bead, then like two whites, I think is what I need to go pull mine out. But I should have came prepared, dang it. I guess we can do a follow-up. But yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's nothing quite like see that bomber go down.
Yeah. Well, that's what my last couple steelhead have been on jigs. You know, everybody else running beads, running, you know, worms, all that kind of stuff. My last two steelhead have been on jigs, and so I've been kind of hard pressed to break away from that. You know, I threw the Steely spoon this morning, ran jigs through the run, you know, ran some beads through the run, and you know, it's just there again, like you said, it's hit and miss. You know, unless you're out there every single day, you know, to hit those, you know, certain times and certain pockets, and you know, when you get a little pot of fish moving through, you know, it seems like I always fish the top of every run, and it's just because I'm all alone there usually, and you know, you'll have everybody else down below you, and they're throwing everything, and boom, the guy at the top of the run picks one up on a little 1/4 ounce, you know, nightmare jig or, you know, marabou jig, how, you know, whatever you want to use, and it's just because those fish have been terrorized by so much tackle that this little unassuming bug floating perilously down the river works out good. So looks like Ted, he uses a fly called the crystal meth for steelhead. I need to look that up. Now Ted's in Pennsylvania, so he fishes the you know, the lake run steelhead back there. So that's pretty cool.
Very addictive, so I get it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, well, think about the different flies we have here. We have the dirty hoe, the intruder. You know, I mean, those are like all classic patterns. You know, they're all over. They're all over the place. So, you know, I mean, I just took Justin Carnop, who's the owner of CD Fishing, and he was a guide on the Deschutes River for 20 years. I took him out, and he got his first sturgeon this last week, and but he guided steelhead, and he developed a modification of a large woolly bugger pattern called is called the Carnop Space Invader, and Umpqua Fly picked that up, and they actually put it into production as a steelhead fly. Predominantly a summer steelhead fly. So, I mean, there's all kinds of goofy names. Obviously, the Sex Dungeon, that's a Kelly Gallup thing, and all this other stuff. So, you know, yeah. So Ted's saying that it's a crystal flash tied into an egg pattern, which makes sense. It's no different than, you know, the little marabou jig has that egg-shaped fish-like round things. You know, they like round, and they like fuzz. It's something about the ugliness of it that turns the fish on, I think. I don't know.
Can I ask what pound test you're using there, Brian, on your leader?
12-pound Maxima Ultra
nice.
Green. Yeah.
Nice.
So I typically run Maxima Ultra Green. I did switch out. I went to P-Line CX fluorocarbon today. The turbidity dropped quite a bit, and there was a lot of pressure lower in the river and all that. Ottercat, thanks for stopping in. So yeah, it's interesting how that changes, but you know, through and through, I've become more and more of a fan of Maxima over the years, just for all my general purpose fishing, whether I'm offshore doing halibut or not halibut, but lingcod and bottom fish and stuff like that. You know, putting on a 50-pound top shot, that way, you know, you hang up and you don't lose everything, or you know, tying mooching rigs, you know, for you know, springers or coho, you know, using 40 or 50-pound ultra green, you know, mono spinners, all that kind of stuff. I've grown to really like that, but for steelhead, 12-pound just seems to be the magic number. It gives you enough power and strength. unless you really rail into a big fish, like, you go and you look at like the hoe or the queets, or, what's the one way up the Quinault, where you have these massive brood stock monsters, where, you're going to probably want to run 15 and they're not going to be scared of it,
Yeah.
that type of thing, but rarely ever have I fished a line heavier than 15-pound test for steelhead, plug rods, doing the whole, plunking or something like that. Then I'm running, 15 ultra green or something, and it always gets the job done.
Yeah, you can. I know that they got it. I don't know how they exactly test the pounds with fishing line, but yeah, at the Maxim too, it's Maxima. It's I feel like you can cheat a little bit. You know what I mean? You can almost go down like 2 pounds. It's such a good stiff line. It's yeah. At any rate, Earl, I saw a comment go by, and yeah, we do need to get crabbing, man. I apologize for not getting down and taking you up on your generous offer. Sounds like you want a new sub base. I want crab. Fair trade.
Well, one fishery that I've always wanted to do, and you guys have it up there, is the squid jigging off the pier, getting out and jigging for squid. And I know that that's kind of one of those things where it's like, for you, it's like, I guess it'd be like the equivalent of us with sturgeon. It's like, they're sturgeon, they're out there and they're everywhere. But to go squid jig at night would be just an absolute blast. And I'm just waiting for the calendar to turn to the right day so I can get my Washington annual license, because I got some business to attend to in Lake Merwin with some tiger muskie. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's been a fish that particular fishery, I've really wanted to target those tiger muskies up there, and even make it up to Lake Mayfield and go buzz around there, put the drift boat in and go buzz all the little inlets and everything else, and go work the log jams for those tigers.
There used to be a lake, and I think I'll say it out loud because I don't think they could still survive. Lake Anderson, I believe it's called, in Lewis County. I always wanted to do a high alpine hike that apparently they put tiger muskies in. There's this group of folks who plants things. And I had a buddy who was clearing trails up there, but this was like at this point 15 years ago. And he said they were all over. And that was just so intriguing to me because they were, they say, well, I guess they say a muskie is a fish of a 10,000 cast, but tiger muskies can be really hit or miss too. But I gotta imagine they're all dead by now.
Yeah,
with a 20-year lifespan, unless they kept putting them in. But
yeah, that would be interesting to go hike to a high alpine lake and go take a spinner bait or a bucktail and throw out there and just start reeling in and just get railed by like a 50-inch tiger. I mean, well, in that small of a lake, the food sources, because muskie are 100% predatory. They're not like munching on grass on the side of the lake. They're looking to hunt stuff.
Yeah.
But, them also being hybrid with a northern pike, so you take a muskellunge and a northern pike, you put them together, and you get this whole, mix of this super predatory fish with a high prey drive. What's going on, Steve? Thanks for stopping in. Sarah, thank you for stopping in. Good to see you. We got My Style Baits in here, and we got Steve from Wyoming.
Yeah, hello. And
we got all kinds of cool people. So,
very cool.
Yeah,
all the cool kids are here.
Yeah, see, this is the party to be at on Friday night, because you never know who's going to pop in.
Only the lames aren't here, But you can be cool too by joining.
Yeah. So tell your friends, get over here and start talking, because we're talking about
jumping
cool
off bridges
stuff.
over here. It's a cool thing to do.
Swan dive, just like that. So yeah, there's a lot of fisheries in Washington that I definitely want to get up and access. And I mean, I don't like to say that I take Oregon for granted, because there's a lot of great fishing down here too. But the uniqueness of Puget Sound as a massive estuary, an inland sea essentially. You have the Salish Sea up around the San Juans. You have Puget Sound. It's just it's such a unique area to fish. It's like going to the Florida Keys or up into the Gulf of Alaska. You have all these inlets that have big deep water pockets that hold halibut within an inland sea. And lings and kelpies and I mean all kinds of stuff. It's just really fascinating to me. Whereas in Oregon, we don't.
But one thing you have that just mops the floor with us, and why I need to follow up with Earl, is your crabbing. So in Washington State, it is open on the coast basically year round. There is a little period of time where they only use pots because of the soft shell condition, like when they molt. So they can only throw rings at that point. But it's coast year round. 6 is the limit, which I know is like nothing for you guys. And then in inland in Puget Sound, there's 2 seasons: a summer season and a winter season. The winter season is actually like a late fall season. So it's basically July to it's basically like Independence Day to Labor Day is our summer season. And then in the winter season, basically we have catch record cards, and then they determine like what areas they can reopen. And then the winter season can run anywhere from October to December. Sometimes they'll open places late, like mid-November, if it's like Seattle or something. I digress, but in Puget Sound, it's only 5 crab per person. So one area that you just got us licked is the crabbing, because you have all the nice sandy expanses, that they just love to crawl around on.
Yeah, we have epic crabbing down here. We have generous limits. So, you invest in a shellfish license here in Oregon, and you know that you're going to go home with 12 crab. It might take a lot of work, but you're going to go home with 12 really nice Dungeness crab. We have a generous red rock limit with no size or sex, issue. It's really good crabbing. It's just off the charts. Obviously, Earl, Steve, myself, Jake, any of us, we get out there and do that. So Steve posted a question: is it 6 per season or per day?
It is per day, and we have to put them on a punch card. I don't know if you guys have to do that. So Nope. It's just like a salmon punch card. And it's with the coast is 6 per day, Puget Sound is 5 per day. And then that's Dungies. And then we can keep an additional 6 red rock. And the red rock can be either sex, but most people just keep the males anyway. And of course, the Dungies have to be males. I assume it's that way in Oregon too.
It is. Yeah.
So, I will say in the Columbia we can keep 12. So for those southwestern Washingtonians, they can come down and we get 12 in the Columbia. But that's the only place. Everywhere else is, and it's probably just because we're riding your coattails. They say, oh, if Oregon gets 12, we get 12 too. Dang it! But if you're in Washington, where it's not a border, then it's only 5 or 6. And sometimes it's a channel. Like I have plenty of videos on my channel where I go out and I do not get 5 or 6. I get like 1 or 3 or 4. So it's sometimes it slides out. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's not. So it's just it's really interesting when you think about it. Because by the time you get up to BC, it's really rocky habitat, and Washington seems to be kind of the coast is good, but outside of that, we're kind of like transitioning. Where it's like sort of rocky, sort of sandy, sort of muddy. So
yeah. So Earl racked up 762 crab total. That wasn't just on his boat, but what he was involved with getting on. So
dang, I had settled for 761.
Yeah. I think I'm good with my 12 limit, and that's plenty of cracking for me to do. That's one of those things that it works out really good. It's interesting, and we had this discussion a couple weeks ago, I believe, and I don't think Earl was in the discussion for that. I believe he was busy. He was at a fundraiser, but we started talking about the crab evisceration, and as you know, Earl's got a lot of videos out, and Steve, myself, Hitch by Hitch Jake, we use the crab cracker and we eviscerate all of our crab prior to cooking. And there's a lot of people from the East Coast and the South, that go for the blue crab. They don't get it because, in a lot of cases they can eat that crab whole. And then there's a lot of people around here that, they like to cook the whole crab and dip their crab meat into the crab butter, so to speak. But my reasoning behind the use of the crab cracker is domic acid, and I believe that you discussed some of that in some of your estuaries where the levels get so high for marine toxic algae, that evisceration's necessary, and even commercial fisheries in California were requiring it. They're like, hey, it's great, bring back the live crab for inspection, but they all have to be eviscerated before they're cooked and sold on the market. What's kind of your take on that whole thing?
I did grow up cooking them whole, and because a lot of people from the East Coast are thinking of blue crab, like where they could be like mildly, I don't know if they're super toxic or just mildly toxic or what, but it's so with us, it's I believe that is also because that they've eaten some kind of algae. I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but at any rate, so in Washington State, there are areas of the state that I think you would want to eviscerate your crab because, like, if you're in Seattle or something, like there's just PCBs and stuff in the water. You know what I mean? Like it's just like regular toxins, like not toxins, but toxics, like man-made things. Like
mercury, PCB.
Yeah, big urban area. You might as well get the guts out. And just eat the meat. Where like those things. Department of Ecology did a study here, which for Oregon, your equivalent would be DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality. And I think they found that the shrimp and the crab are pretty dang clean, besides in those urban areas where it's the crab maintained it in their viscera, And so basically, I think it's probably even in our regs to like throw out the butter if you're in I could be wrong, but it's definitely been a thing before where it's you want to throw out the butter. Yeah, if you're on the coast and there's not a pollution source, it depends. I mean, if you want to just be totally safe, then yeah. And I do myself now. I totally eviscerate them and just clean two halves, or boil two halves. I think it's a cleaner taste too. That's why I do it for sure. And but yeah, domoic acid for sure. It's we have closed crabberies now, crab fisheries now because of it. Because when it's been really high, so like we close our razor clamming obviously if it's high, but it's gotten bad enough now that we will close crab fishing.
Yeah, well, and you clam, I clam, and the razor clamming. So the Oregon Department of Agriculture actually does all the domic acid testing here. So your Department of Ecology probably encompasses a lot more.
Oh, that's so funny because for us, actually, ecology doesn't. That was just like a one-off study. Oh, Ottercat's taking off.
Oh, take care, Ottercat. Thanks for stopping in. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, and. But it's our Department of Health that does it, that actually does the testing. So, so it's just kind of interesting how that breaks out. And the reason they do that is because it's considered food safety.
Yeah. Wendy, thanks for stopping in. Welcome to the channel.
Hey, yeah. Great to meet you.
Brand new folks here. Everybody, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the like, and also if you're not subscribed to Blake's channel, make sure to slide over there and subscribe. He's got a lot of great stuff over there, all about Washington fishing. Just wanted to plug that now. Probably should have plugged it a little earlier, but
absolutely. And that channel name again is PNW Vintage Outdoors.
Yeah. We're talking about Washington Fish Quest also.
Oh, that channel. Yeah,
that channel.
That one's okay.
Yeah, that one's really okay. So, so it's always like this debate, but I also summate that a lot of the people that are making those comments may be are very narrow in their thought process of like, hey, there's other fisheries out here that we do this with, and you look at like the Alaskan king crab and Apelio, snow crab fisheries. You don't get a whole crab when you go to the store. All you get is legs, and they pre-eviscerate all those crabs. So what are we missing out of the back of a king crab or a Apelio? Obviously we're not missing anything because you get this 2.5 foot long leg and massive claw and all this other stuff, and absolutely delicious crab. I still put Dungeness higher on the totem pole than those, but that's also because that's what we're accustomed to. So
we get them like completely fresh, too. But totally, they are a little sweeter than those. It can be a little salty, but it's all good for me. I was gonna say, I'm kind of I remember. I think it was Elvis. They asked him, about politics or something, or what he thought of the war or something like that. And he was just like, I'm just an entertainer, man, or whatever, So that's kind of how I am on my channel, where I try to not be controversial. So I actually steered so clear of like anything to do with cleaning. Like it's amazing how like cleaning fish or cleaning crabs or cleaning clams can just rile people up. It's like a religion, However people do it, they think it's just like, do it this way, you're gonna die. Do it this way, you're disrespecting the fish, or like whatever. It's just it's amazing. It's like,
it's unbelievable. Ted posted up a question here. Are there programs that you guys are in or know about to help the crabs thrive, or any program that helps the population since so many people take the crabs? I know that our recreational fisheries pretty closely managed by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the there's another one that deals with marine shell. Well, I know NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, has a lot to do with our offshore saltwater marine fisheries. I'm assuming for you, Blake, it's WDFW and NOAA. I don't know if you guys have any other entities that are managing that, but they give us fairly generous limits in Oregon, and I think it's just because the Sound and the Washington coast. So the Washington coast doesn't have nearly as many harbors and bays as the Oregon coast. So we have a longer coastline of harbors and bays and estuaries and all that. And the Washington coast doesn't. But what you don't have in that, you have the Strait of Juan de Fuca, you have the Salish Sea, you have Puget Sound. So you do have more in the salt, so to speak. But I also think that it may have something to do with the boundary, the border between Canada and Washington as well. Maybe, the Canadian provincial, the BC provincial, fishery management, whatever they're called up there, they probably have some say in some of your keep limits as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know with halibut and things of that nature, they certainly do, it has to be worked out. So international at that point. Got a good chuckle there from Weed Hopper and your average fish keeper. Real humanitarians or crabitarians, they don't want those crab to be cold.
Yeah.
So,
but bring them in and warm them up. Yep.
Yep. Warm them up. They, what was I going to say? They, shoot, it left me. Yeah. So, that was about so I think with the crab fishery, why it's so easily to manage is you can tell the difference between a female and a male. So, I mean, I think that's like the real conservation thing, because so we have to put back every female Dungeness crab, and the size limit in both states, as far as I know, is such that they should get at least one breeding season in. I think in we do believe in Puget Sound, they grow, I think, a little slower or something, because is it 5 3/4 in Oregon?
Yes.
Okay. So in Puget Sound, it's actually 6.5, and then, or 6 1/4, excuse me, 6 1/4. And then it's 6 inches on our coast, and then it's 5 3/4 in the Columbia. So we got 3 different sizes, but that's how it's a sustaining fishery. Is you have to put back the males if they're Dungeness, and they also should get at least one breeding season in just by that size. So it's really cool that you can just identify them underneath just by turning them over. And Washington State, I don't know if it's the same way in Oregon or not, but the commercial fleet just nails them. Our coast, they say it's 95% of the harvestable crabs are harvested, and I believe that's by the commercial fleet. And that's bonkers to me that the entire coast, 95% are taken. So
yeah. We have a pretty prolific commercial fishery here for the crabs too, especially. We'll just call out home ports for Earl, it's the Aquinnah. Newport, that's his home port there. My home port up here, Garibaldi. There's large commercial crabbing fleets, but they did hold off the commercial crabbers for quite a while this winter. And I went out with my friend Jim in December, and every trap we pulled from the 70-foot line out in the ocean was just chocked full of dinner plates. I mean, the gauge wouldn't even, the edge of the gauge wouldn't even go over the edge. So awesome. We're talking about 2 or 3 year, breed cycle crabs that, these males had came in close. So there was probably females that were already clutching in the area, but we didn't pull a single female out of any of our traps, and everything we got was well over legal size. I mean, they would have been big, oversized crab for you guys up there. You guys would have been like, wow, you put the stick on them and the little wing doesn't even go over them. So, they ocean crab are always real dominant. And if you get a flat day where you can cross the bar, that's where you want to crab. If you got enough line for your pot, that's like the hot spot.
When I have a big ocean crab, they're always so cheesed off. I'll catch them at a Puget Sound sometimes, and they're not always, but sometimes they're kind of lethargic. They're kind of like, oh, I'll kill you. Get over here. Ocean crab is they just want to murder like
Yeah, they're just they're
yeah.
it's like Predator, they're hissing and everything else and spitting blood when you pull them out of the yeah, they're
Absolutely.
yeah, they're definitely a more aggressive breed. But you think about the areas that they hang out in, and the predators that they have. Like you take a cabezon, for example, they'll just grab that whole thing and munch it up. I mean, that's the
Yeah, it
kind of
makes
fish
sense.
that so they got to be big and mean out there. So they got to fend off those cabezon, and I don't know what else eats them out there, but I know cabezon hammer down on them pretty good. So
Yeah, absolutely.
but cabbies are delicious fish. I mean.
I
They're
totally, they
absolutely
are, they
excellent.
are, and they're beautiful to look at. I'm just kidding. Yeah, they're pretty
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, they look like a Dilophosaurus. They got their wings spread out and
Yeah,
everything. But man, do they fight! They fight good too. The
they
difference
fight.
between a cabbie and a ling, that's for sure.
Yeah, they fight and they're just hyper aggressive, and yeah, it tastes great.
Yeah,
I see Earl has a comment there about here that the males over 5 inches or so don't breed much. I wonder if that's why in Puget Sound maybe that it is the 6 1/4, because I was thinking maybe they grew slower, but maybe that's just like put in a little insurance that they'll probably like, because that's a big population. So Washington State, I don't know our population for sure, but I know it's over 6 million, and the majority of it, well, not the majority, but millions of them. I don't know, maybe half. I mean, it's on the Puget Sound, that part of I-5. So that could be why that is. Maybe that insures it. Maybe I don't know, or comes closer. Maybe that way the higher, for sure, how much higher percentage would at that point.
yeah. Well, I mean, you have Olympia at the south, you have Tacoma, and you have Seattle, and then you have Bellingham. I mean, you have this whole arc of these large cities, not counting Kirkland and if you want to talk about like the people that live over on the Hood Canal side and everything else, I mean, there's just a very large population surrounding the sound. But that's the way that humanity's is. We centralize around major water sources. So you know, that's just what it is. But I think that management becomes key, especially when you have a city as large as Seattle. And the metro surrounding area. You have Kirkland and what is it? Redmond, is that
Yeah.
or is yeah? So you
Yeah,
have
there's I mean, there's so many, you could just keep naming cities that are pretty dang
yeah,
big, and yeah, and Olympia,
so,
near where I live, it's one of the smallest. It's the capital of the state, but it's one of the smaller ones. I don't know how many people are in Olympia, 50,000 in the area, maybe. But it's like it's big, but it's you can know every store in the place if you felt, if that was what you wanted to do. So, uh,
yeah,
yeah, the further north you go, and we also got Joint Base Lewis McChord, which is great. It's a really awesome military base, but pulls in a lot of folks too. We get a lot of traffic jams and that sort of thing around there, and it's got a really big base. And luckily, that's how I. Sorry, now I'm just rambling. But I was gonna say that's my wife ended up here because her parents were both in the military. So
oh
I met
okay,
her. Yeah.
yeah, and then of course you have the Bremerton Naval Base as well,
Yeah.
and the Whidbey Island Air Station and all. So yeah, it's a major hub for people coming and going, and of course our folks in uniform love outdoor recreation. In my smelt video, Nathan, he was there with me down on the Cowlitz when we were dipping. He was actually stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and that's how he got into fishing the green and the squally and doing all that kind of stuff. He's like, man, Oregon fishing doesn't have anything on any of those other fisheries and or the Washington fisheries, just because you get your odd year pink run and then you get your chums and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to know that they're up there. We got that safety net, but also the population and the pressure on the fisheries and just outdoor recreation in general. That's one of the other things that it kind of has an effect on.
Yep. It's the catch-22 with paradise. A lot of people want to be there.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess getting kind of back to what you're doing this year. Obviously you got your own personal stuff going on, but you're going down to doing like one video a month. Basically, you're going to do 12 videos through the course of the year, and you got any species that you haven't targeted yet that you're going to try to go after?
Oh yeah. So, geez, I mean, I always have like a notebook, and it has like all these options, and I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. And, I usually do one just because of time. it's gonna sound funny, but I want to go after sucks. I'd love to do a sucker episode. And right now is actually when they're in our rivers, like a bridge lip sucker or a large scale sucker.
Hmm.
Just put some eggs on the bottom,
Yeah.
and yeah, I probably well maybe Earl. I was gonna say it's hard to see. There's so many dang cars, but I'm sure. So technically, probably yes. But good luck picking me up. When I saw you drove to Tacoma and Seattle, I was thinking, well, Tacoma's cool. Can my condolences and having to go all the way up to Seattle if it was during the daytime because oof, we get backed up on that section I-5.
Yeah. Take
But
care, Ted.
oh, go ahead. I was
Oh
gonna say
no.
okay, all right. I was gonna say carp. So 2 years ago I went carping with my buddy Brad in Moses Lake, which is a gigantic fishery, and I actually bought the stuff to make the carp balls. I can't remember what it's called, but the pack bait that you put on and cast out. And I have never caught well, no, I take that back. I've caught carps on accident, but I've never actually went to target a carp and catch it. So I'll for sure be doing a carp episode this year. Trying to think of what else. I'd really like to do gooseneck barnacle, which is a shellfish, but
Yeah.
it's I've really wanted to do that. I need to get on the stick if I'm going to do it because it's only open the areas I want to do it at least close in March because it's like the northern. It's actually in the federal part of the Olympic National Park. Well, the whole Olympic National Park is federal, but federal part of our coastline, and so they just have a season there that runs basically through the winter or fall and winter, I guess. But yeah, so that's not a fish, but I've always heard they're great. I used to box when I was a kid and in the early 20s as well. And the Macaw Nation up there, Nia Bay, I know well, I don't know them anymore, but I knew folks up there that, yeah, they really preferred those goosenecks and barnacles to even like crab or things like that. They thought they were just the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they call them horse neck barnacles down here or something like that, or maybe they are gooseneck. I got to look at the regs, but
they're probably exactly the same. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, another nomenclature thing that changes.
You eat this? Do you eat the stalks opposed to the actual barnacle?
Yeah,
yeah, because I'm sure it's probably the same. If it's not the same, it's like very closely related. I'm sure it is. But
yeah. I know that his name's PK. He has a channel called Oregon Life. He actually went out and harvested them and cooked them up and ate them. And it was something that another friend of mine and we were talking about that we wanted to go do, is to get down there on the coast and go harvest some of those and actually try it, because we went through this big kick of like, hey, we wanted to get on these shellfish. We wanted to do all this other stuff. And, we were razor clamming like crazy on the North Coast. And we were like, we got to, we need to go dig up some, go pick some mussels and stuff like that. And Steve, he actually did a mussel video as well. But, one of those things was to go after those gooseneck barnacles, was to get some of those and actually try those, because they actually look like they're really good.
Yeah. Everybody I've had that has tried them has told me that. And, I mentioned the tribal population up there in our upper corner, but I have a coworker who I did a free diving video a couple of years ago off of Lopez Island, and they were in the water, like they were kind of, they were just doing their thing, and they were under the water line, and she was pretty upset that I didn't just like scrape a bunch off and bring them back, because it was I thought about it, it crossed my mind. It wasn't what I was there to do. I wasn't like prepared, didn't have like a thing to even put them in, but it was I really need to do that.
Now, are you going to do some more free diving stuff as well?
Yeah, my problem is I can't. Well, there's two things. The people do invite me, and it's a very welcoming community, and they're a great community. There's some communities of folks that I'll get to the Gooey Duck after this ramble.
Yeah,
that are kind of hard to get into, but free divers are great. My problem is this: I'm not great at it. Like some people are naturally good at it. I kind of stink. So, or I'm learning. Okay, let me not be self-deprecating. I'm learning, and they. So I go out with these people who are like studs, and they're just dropping down to 60 feet, staying down for a minute and a half, coming back up, and I'm like flailing around to get down to like 25 feet. I stay down for like 20 seconds, and I come back up almost dead, and and I'm exaggerating a little, but not much. And then so there's like that, folks. So that's who you want to go with. But then there's outside of that, there's not like other people like me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I can either go out with these like super good people or like no one at all. So I just need to find some local diving buddies, I guess. So to answer your question, yes, but I'm probably going to do at least a video. There's some docks in my area, like actually on lakes, and I actually just want to go down and try to salvage things. That's what I want, or pick up trash at least. But
Oh, that'd be cool.
I want to do some more like pedestrian stuff before I go back out into like the big water, like Nia Bay and CQ and stuff like I was doing. First video I ever did it, and I threw up. I mean, it was took a big wave in the mouth, but it was it's fun. But it's not as laid back as hook and line fishing. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Weed Hopper, he asked about the gooey ducks. I've never dug gooey ducks. I've never ate gooey ducks, but I know, Blake, you have.
Indeed, I have. Yeah, I usually annually I get a gooey duck or 1 to 3 gooey ducks, about what I eat a year. Some people think they're the best. I like them. They're pretty good. I don't know where I'd put them in my shellfish hierarchy. I think I just like regular steamer clams better, like manila clams, little neck clams. So I do enjoy them. I like razor. I kind of feel like razor clam to me is like king clam. So I dig them up. I think it's like a Pacific Northwest kind of like bucket list thing to do. They're good. Some people think they're great. Some people, if you gave them a gooey duck, they would just like think you're giving them a new car or something. I mean, like it's like they just think they're just the best. I might be cooking them wrong. I know a lot of people do them sashimi style, which I've never done. I put them through a quick boil, which makes their neck skin just like peel off. I think you can do that at any rate, but it didn't. So I might just not know what I'm doing. I grew up cooking them like a hick. Yeah, I was and am. But so maybe it's that lack of finesse. We'd pound them with a meat tenderizer. They're sort of tough. They're very sweet. They got a very sweet, delicate flavor. You can easily overpower them. This is a weird comp, but it's kind of like when you cook chanterelles. Like if you put a clove of garlic in there with them, you just overpower them. Like they would just taste like garlic. Gooey duck are kind of the same. They have a very mild flavor, unlike in my opinion anyway, unlike a razor clam, let's say. And
yeah, I mean, your standard bay clam, razor clam, all that stuff. I mean, they are what they are, and I think if there's the central nexus of the clam community usually focuses all on razor clams, and of course back east you have a lot of folks that go like after what we call cockles and butter clams and all those different types of shellfish species and everything else. And, those are often the ones that are used in the classic New England clam chowder. Out here, we throw razor clams in there. And these people are like, you're desecrating this beautiful clam. Well, the necks and feet are what you put in there. The actual body meat, we're taking that, we're breading it, and we're frying it, and it's a very quick cook time, but for a gooey duck.
As I've gotten older, I love the feet and just the digger, I fry the digger up now. I love the fattiness. I used to be the opposite for me. Now I chop up the body and throw it into the chowder.
Yeah. Oh boy. Here we go. Earl, if you're a hick, then what am I?
Well, I think I'm a Washington hick. We just don't have accents, like there's no accents here that are native to, but I don't know, King Hick maybe. I'm just kidding, Earl.
Well, one of the things that I went to Wisconsin this last summer. My good friend Cameron lives there, and we were on the Wausau Pub paddling, kayaks down this little tiny river, and it's basically a massive party. And anything in the Midwest and Wisconsin was, it's basically a massive drinking party. So there's a bunch of drunk kayakers out there. And I look over and I was talking to his wife. His wife's from here in Oregon. They're both from Oregon. And I said, man, I just can't get over the accents here. Every time I come here, it's just like, I'm like, it's just blows my mind. And their friend was like, well, I don't have an accent. I was like, yeah, you have an accent. Like, no, I don't. I was like, yeah, you do. And then my friend's wife finally says, yeah, you guys have like a accent. And she's like, really? I didn't think we had an accent. It's like, oh man, here we go. And so basically you have a bunch of these, people from the Midwest with their Midwest accent babbling drunk, and it's actually really entertaining from that aspect. But yeah, we don't have the whole accent thing to go along with the hickory. So, I guess you could fake it till you make it, right? I mean, Earl, you're from Virginia, so you were born with that accent, so it
Birthright.
just kind of goes along with it. So let's see. Got some more stuff here. Oregon Fishing Adventures. He wants to learn how to pump the sand shrimp and weed hopper. You pump sand shrimp, so and you go out to Cape Mears. Yeah, that's a popular place to do that. Um, you know, yeah, there's just so many different opportunities for us to be able to really engage with all of our different fisheries and everything else. But it's just so cool. Like I said, your fisheries, Blake, are so much more unique in your way, and then our fisheries are so much more unique in our way. Bigger limits on crab, smaller crab size to get to that limit, versus you can walk down a mud flat and you can pick up oysters. We have no recreational oyster harvest in Oregon at all. So yeah. I mean,
If you like them. Some people hate them. I love them though.
I love oysters. They're one of my favorites. I can't go without, but I have to go buy them here. I can't go out onto the mud flat and do that. And, that's one of those things. And, it's just, it's, man, it's cool. So that's another one I would like to do with you at some point in time. So this year, I need to make plans and just show up, let you know. And
I
show
suffer
up.
from the same thing where I just need to do it. It's tough. There's always a reason. There's always a reason not to. There's always several reasons not to.
Yeah. Are you gonna make your pilgrimage down for any shad fishing this year, or are you gonna bypass that?
I still got a freezer full of them, so that's also why I need to get crabbing. But so we'll see if I do or not. When I usually think I'm not going to, then it rolls around and I'm just like, oh, because it's how many fisheries can you just go, hammer them until your arms are tired, basically like that, So
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that May, as soon as the cottonwood trees drop their fluff, that's it. Shad are in. So that's when we know it's time to go shad fishing. But yeah, I didn't know if you were going to make a Columbia pilgrimage or not. But definitely, this last year I had every intention to come up and fish pinks. And, it's an odd number year. You got all the pinks running in rivers. They're coming in like, mad, crazy. And, I know that they're just like shad too, that when they get in and, you got all the guys out there salmon fishing and they're trying to pick through all those, everything they're throwing is getting hammered, so definitely another fishery and to actually get into, a little bit more varied chum fishery would be excellent. You guys get chum every year, don't you? Yeah.
Some years it can be depressed. There's been, by the way, so it looks like Steve's taking off. See you, Steve.
Yeah. See you, Steve.
But, we do. Some years it's been depressed. There's all these rumors of like the Russian fleet and that sort of thing, like getting it because they go all out into the run by Japan and Russia and stuff. So I don't know, but some years they're oddly depressed now, which never used to happen, and some years it's bonkers and it's great. So yeah, we do. And in my area in South Puget Sound, a lot of them return. Chum viewing is a thing that we do here every year where you can just go to a lot of streams and you'll just see, 30 of them in a stretch and they're just biting each other's tails. And it's, they're all, completely turned at that point. You wouldn't want to catch or keep them or anything, but yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's a real part of, if I had to pick an animal that represents the area I live in, it'd either be the gooey duck or the chum. I mean, and that includes terrestrial animals because they're just prevalent around here. Gooey duck they are hammered on public beaches, but outside of the public beaches, they thrive. Apparently, it's the biggest biomass in Puget Sound. Like if you took every animal, apparently gooey duck would be the most weight. That includes whales and stuff because they're so prevalent.
Wow.
Because they exist down to about 90 feet, is my understanding. So there's just the vast majority of them. I mean, sure, commercial divers can get them, but most of us will never see them. I think there's only about 10% of the population that's actually intertidal. The rest of them are deeper. And And then because they like mud, we have a lot of mud here, and then same thing with chums. I mean, we just get so many chums back here. Like most streams, like little streams in my area, kind of north of Olympia, like Shelton area, that sort of thing, like kind of southern Hood Canal and Hood Canal. Yeah, they come back. I will say the chums will be interesting. They're starting to get a commercial value. They call them Keta salmon now too, is like a new marketing ploy. And I think, I mean, I should be careful, but I think Ivers might purchase them. Some big, like my lawyer here off to the side's telling me, that's I shouldn't name drop like that. But the some big fish and chips places purchasing them, and I think they're paying like $1 a pound, which before they used to be like kind of sort of, I don't want to say worthless, but maybe like a quarter. Like people would like use them for, you can commercial catch them and use them as like dog food or something. You know what I mean? Like it was for fertilizer. So, and I will say if you catch them in the salt before they hit the river, I've caught pure silver ones, and I've caught ones with just a little striping. You can, so I clean them. I'll either have them smoked, or you can, there's a method where you can just put a little salt on them, let them sit over, like they firm up overnight, and just cook them just like that. No breading, no nothing. Just throw them in a pan, and it's not bad. There's not a ton of flavor. It's not as good as the other salmon, frankly, but it's still a good fish, good protein, good omega-3s, all that good stuff. If you can get them in the salt. I mean, once they hit the river, there are some rivers. Nisqually, though, it's an odd river. It's pretty close to me. It's one of my home rivers. The Chinook are bad because of the hatchery genetics. I'm sure the wild ones are great. We only keep hatchery. The coho are excellent. The pinks turn to zombies the second they hit the river. And the chum some of them remain chrome bright, like pretty much being in the river for weeks, which is just bizarre. But so point of my rambling is it's different around here. We got so many chum streams that it's different in every stream.
Yeah. That's one of the interesting things is, you get the, you have certain streams where the fish will maintain, well, and then you have other streams where the fish just fall to pieces almost instantaneously. Like as soon as they hit the brackish discharge in the intertidal area, they just, like a chum, they just turn into the big, monster toothed, dark striped fish. And, that's what we have here in Oregon. We don't have a retention on chum anymore. That got blown away years ago. I remember as a kid going deer hunting and elk hunting down on the coast, and you would drive by one of the two rivers that got it, and everybody's lined up, and they're catching the chum. They basically, only try to harvest the hens, and they would take the eggs and they'd just leave the rest of the fish on the bank to rot. And so that really started to change a lot of stuff. And even like the low river spawners, we call them tules. I think Weed Hopper, he just started talking about that. We get a lot of tules in the lower Columbia system, which are low river Chinooks that spawn. But there is a hatchery element of those that if you get them out in the Columbia, so Buoy 10 fishery, so whether you're going out of Warrenton or Ilwaco, pick your poison on wherever you want to go. You can get bright fall Chinook that are hatchery origin. I actually got a harvest card up here on my little pegboard from this last fall where they had snout tags, and they sent it back, and none of the fish that we caught were from very far upriver. Actually, they were literally the first 3 Trib Creeks on the Oregon side that those fish came from. We thought that they were all going to be Idaho fish because they were so bright and they cut so clean, but they were all low river Columbia Chinook. And so I was flat out shocked because typically you don't get those low river fish that hold that well. But you do know the difference between, typically, a difference between a Thule and a upriver bright fall Chinook based on their smell. Because a Thule just about hormones out as soon as they get over by a place we call Shipwreck. It's over by Fort Stevens. They start to stink. I mean, they're slimy, nasty, and they smell horrible. I mean, you don't even want to bring them on your boat for the most part. But, they're out there. They're aggressive. They attack. But sometimes it can be difficult to identify the differences, besides the large pronounced anal fin and everything else. So, we do have that as well. So that's kind of part of one of our fisheries. So yeah, it's interesting though. So, definitely looking forward to fishing Washington this year, coming up there and party crashing the state of
Absolutely.
Washington.
Yeah, let me know when you can make it up.
Yeah, for sure. So,
But hey, you already kind of did once. How did you enjoy smelting?
oh, the smelt was fantastic. I think that the Columbian put out an article, and they said that there was 8,600 dippers, 54,000 pounds of smelt taken, and they wrote 100 citations and confiscated 600 pounds of smelt. And that was because people were up above the ramp in Castle Rock dipping smelt out of the exclusion zone, so to speak. So that's why we didn't see any of our friends from the game wardens. They were all up there too busy, and so we kind of had our own lay of the land. But I did stop by the check station up there in the parking lot, and I let them. Yeah, we had them weighed. Contributed to our biological data. Everything was 100% males. They had not seen any females, so they said the females had already made it upriver, and the males were in tow. So all the smelt you dipped should have been all male, unless you got a few intermixed females.
I made a dumb joke, as I tend to do, because we had 20 seconds, where I said, "Hey, I got 100. Between us, we got 180 new friends. I'm gonna go have a smoke with them. I'm gonna go smoke them." But that was based off of a lot of the time I get a mix of males and females. So when I counted them this time, it was way fewer. So that would have been 90 each. I think I got more like something in the 70s. Was my 10 pounds, because they were just heavier because the males are bigger. So that makes a lot of sense that they all were males, because the females tend to be a little less firm and smaller. So good. Thanks for telling me that. That makes sense. I was surprised. Yeah. I thought I messed up. I was like, oh, I must have not got my 10 pounds. But that's why then, is because I put them in bags of 20 in the freezer, and I couldn't quite get to the fourth bag. So
yeah. I went ahead and did them up by tens, and I ended up with about 90. That's what I ended up with. So
I was you nailed it. I might not. I might have been using too heavy duty a bucket. Was my problem. So I might have taken some. I didn't pre-weigh it, so I just guessed on the weight. I thought it was 1.5 pounds. Maybe it was like a 2.5 pound bucket or something.
Yeah, we went ahead and zeroed the scale and weighed. Yeah. We weighed our bucket 1.1 pounds, and that's what we went with. And I ended up dipping 8.5 pounds. So, but I didn't need any more than that. Everybody's like, "Oh, you got to get your full 10 pounds." I'm like, this there's quite a bit. I kept my 10 out to fry up and have for dinner that night, and then the rest of it's all going to be sturgeon bait, or to intermix into the crab chum or whatever else we're going to use it for, lings or halibut or what have you. So, we kind of have all that good stuff. So
I have two friends, my buddy Casey, they really love them. It's like their favorite fish. And my buddy Mark Mercell, he runs the Westport Aquarium. He really loves them too. So I smoke all of mine, but I save them until I'm going to see those two individuals. And then it's like, you kind of come in a hero, because they love them. Like, they just love them. And I think they're good too. For me, it's very nostalgic. I started smelting when I was 2 with my grandpa. One of my favorite pictures is he has a smelt in his mouth, World War II era grandpa, and and I got my little smelt net. It's like a little butterfly net. So for me, it's probably like the oldest fishery for me to ever do. So I also like to fry up my first panful, and I gotta be honest, I don't think they're great pan fried. They're fine, but like they're not like pan frying like a tuna or a salmon or anything like that to me anyway.
Oh yeah,
it's just the nostalgia, smelling them cooking up, that sort of thing. And smoked, I think they're fine too. But for me, it really is just reminds me of my grandpa, and kind of that. I don't know, it just brings me back to the good old days.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it reminds me of too. I was thinking about it, and my family had they've been in Oregon for a long time, and I want to say that somewhere there. My family in one shape, way, or form has been dipping smelt for over 100 years, and so it's been one of those things where, a century-old tradition of going out there with the big old long net and dipping smelt out of the river. My grandma, when we would dip smelt and all that, she would always say, "Oh, we're going to fry a mess of smelt," and it was always in February. And February, March, depending on when they ran and when the fish were thick enough in the river, and we'd have a big pile of fried smelt and all the extra stuff around the table and all that. So it was always a kind of a fun thing to do. And I've always enjoyed that fishery because of the nostalgia. It's such a unique fishery because it's one that we can go dip net with. We can get all these little tasty critters that we can smoke. It's also a great bait for all of our other game fish that we have around here. I just that's what I have fun with it. It's just one of those things, and taking people that are new to it. Like I think you took your friend Peter. He had never done it before, right?
Yeah, good memory. Yep, that was Peter. He's an excellent lingcod fisherman. He goes out of Nia Bay. He gets he's one of the kayaker, and just slays, gets huge lingcod. At any rate, yep, it was his first time, I think. I could be wrong, but I believe it was. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, it was great. He had a good time, and it wasn't like lights out. But I got one pretty good scoop in there. But yeah, it's a lot of fun early. You'll if you can ever time it. It's tough because Fish and Wildlife here on the Washington side anyway, I suspect to keep the numbers down. Like we'll announce it about 2 or 3 days in advance, so it's like super hard to time. I looked out, by the way, Brian. It was like the one day that week I could have possibly taken a morning off of work to go do it, and I still had to dip them and then run back to work, So it was,
Yeah.
So they sat in the back of my truck, and it was also the day it snowed, so I just put a scoop of snow on them, and then I had to clean them, after work. But it was, yeah. So it's that can be. It was on a Thursday, But like I say, for me, it was perfect because it was the only day I could have pulled it off.
Yeah. EB, welcome in. Thanks for stopping in at the live stream here. He's talking about the Smelt Derby in La Conner. You always wanted to go and never did. That's one of those things that, that's one of those things that kind of went away was, there used to be smelt derbies and just, all the people out there on the river. Like we have the Sandy River run down here. And, that was one of the big draws for, the community at Troutdale was the smelt dipping. And, when they started restricting it down more and more and more, and then giving us a 2-day notice on dips and things like that, when they listed the distinct southern population, it ended all that stuff. It would be it'd be a lot of fun to have that
absolutely.
again. But I mean, we still have our other derbies. Obviously, we have our salmon derbies, we have steelhead stuff going on, and all that. But there again, all the under-celebrated game fish, that we have around here, they don't necessarily have a lot of stuff going on with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thanks so much, EB. And I always appreciate your comments, by the way, on my channel. I always really enjoy seeing them. So I did get to do that La Conner Smelt Derby before. I didn't know. I actually wasn't aware that they stopped doing it, so that's a bummer. It's my understanding they used to have like a cat food factory or something up there, and that pulled the smelt in. They were surf smelt opposed to the Ulicon, that we were dipping. But the year I did it, I think I felt like there was maybe like, I could be wrong here, but like half a dozen actual surf smelt caught. My buddy Jerry caught a couple of herring, which was really cool. I caught a starry flounder, which was fun. And it was really old school. They nailed them to wooden boards. Like they put them, they nailed the porpoise to wooden boards. And that was kind of I guess how they were measuring them or something. And yeah, it was cool though. I had a good time. I have a picture of a pelican. There was like this prize table. And don't worry, like on my video when I put it out, like this was like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I got a little flack because there was like kids in the derby too. So it's like, you're like, are you stealing presents? Are you stealing prizes from kids? It's like, oh no, there's like different categories, and the kids get their stuff. Basically, if you're a kid and you show up, you get a prize, And so anyway, I got this picture of this hand drawn. Someone drew a pelican, so that's still in my garage. It's hung up. But at any rate, yeah, it was such a cool derby. It was a really old fashioned type of derby. Yeah. Oh, thank you, EB. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. No food, no smelt. Yeah, is what it sounds like there. Because when that factory went away, because like the effluent, I think, is what pulled them in and what made that derby and the smelt come up so successfully there.
Mm-hmm. So the surf smelt, are they any different from the Ulicon, or are they just are they about the same?
They're a little different. If memory serves, they're typically not as big. They literally spawn in the surf. A video I'd love to do. I always got how the summers are in the Pacific Northwest where you're just like racing through them to like get everything done you can, But I believe it's around August. And if anybody in the chat there, correct me if you know different. And it's just on the time of the day, and it might even be like July. But they spawn in the surf, and they do in Puget Sound, but more prevalently out on the coast, kind of La Push area. you can go up in Washington and you'll see them in the waves. They're like little silver streaks, and you can dip net them there too. You can dip net them, but they're in the salt, and I believe it's 10 pounds. So that's something I absolutely want to do. I wish I could name drop the feller, but there was a guy who, it was a good, really good video. He just had to have a drone over him, and he did. And yeah, he was just sitting, he just went out to the surf and was just scooping them up. It was really cool. So yeah, they're a little different with different life, totally different species for sure. So I'd love to. I've only jigged for them, and I've only ever gotten a couple, and I don't think I ate them because I like got a, if you get like one, it's kind of like whatever, but throw it back. Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely be a fun fishery to go and dip net in the surf, because you go out there and who knows what you're going to kick up in the surf. I've went for redtail surf perch, and I got into a pile of staghorn sculpin. So every cast there was like 1 million sculpin spawning in this trough. It was insane.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah, Irish lords is also what they're known as.
Yeah, that's great. It's it's I've caught some big crab too, trying to surf perch with if I'm using like clam necks or shrimp for bait. Sometimes you'll get a tangle of big dungey and pull it in.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a keeper.
For sure. Yeah, no, I remember specifically one time I was kind of depressed. I can't remember. I think I might have been having car troubles or work problems, or my dog ran after my truck or something. I don't know. I was out on the coast, and I remember catching a really nice dungey from surf perch. It just got tangled in the line. It was
Yeah.
Sculpinator.
Yeah. Well, everybody, we've hit about an hour and a half here. Usually I try to keep these guys down to an hour, but since we got Blake here, it was, lots of fun to, continue chatting and talking. But I usually plug this thing at about an hour and a half because I know I got people that come back and watch it later and everything else. But Blake, do you got anything else you want to say before we wrap this guy up?
No, I just love your channel, brother. And I will drop a video on Monday over on my side of things. It's going to be about a method I like to use for catching perch, called the party over here method, through the ice specifically. And to bury the exciting part of the video, I do catch a walleye at the end, which usually I do stay when I'm ice fishing because they'll hit at dusk and dawn and dusk, and of course in the night. But it's it's ice fishing weather, so I don't like to stay out too late. And usually I do throw that Hail Mary, and this time it was actually caught. So it was, and you'll see me. I'm always excited to catch any fish, but if you watch through the video and see me catch that walleye, you'll see what I look like when I'm ecstatic. I was jacked. It was so fun. But yeah.
Well, that's the fun part, when you're fishing through the ice, you never know what you're going to get. But, I'll definitely be watching it Monday for sure, or Tuesday. Depends on what time you got it coming out, if I'm at work or, I'm on the treadmill. But, to everybody that stopped in tonight, EB, Fishkeeper, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Weed Hopper, Earl. Too. Yeah, no, I really appreciate everybody that came over that knows Blake and knows myself. And there again, don't forget to hit the thumbs up on the video. Really appreciate it. And, Blake, the smelt dipping was fun, albeit that it was fast and you had to run back to work. But I'm really looking forward for us to be able to connect and actually do some fishing. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so you'd rather for more than 20 minutes, because that's kind of what it was like too when we went to the hatchery.
yeah, exactly. No, we definitely need to spend a good chunk of time together doing some fishing. So, but anyways, guys, make sure head over to Blake's channel, Washington Fish Quest. It's at WA Fish Quest. You should be able to click on the link in the description of the video. Head over there, like it, or subscribe, watch some of Blake's videos. It's good stuff. So, but until next week, everybody, thanks so much for popping in the live chat. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Get out there and go chase some fish.